In Hamilton, Ohio, residents enjoy a peaceful suburban lifestyle. The inner city crime of Cincinnati is miles away. But on April 13th, 1998, it didn't seem quite so far. A couple had spotted a human torso washed ashore along the Miami River and called the Butler County Sheriff's Office. Major Anthony Dwyer was the lead investigator on the case. He was also the first to closely examine the remains. Because the body had been in the river, it was badly decomposed and barely recognizable.
When we first discovered the torso, it was up here on the bank, and there was very little we could determine from that. You could tell that it was a white person, but you couldn't even tell if it was a male or a female because of the condition of the body.
The investigators were unable to tell much about the torso. But one thing was clear: this was no accident.
For the extremities being cut off, we took a close look at the bones. It looked like there were saw marks there.
The torso was carefully collected and transported to the morgue for a more thorough examination. Investigators continued to search the area for missing body parts or clues that would help them identify the body. They found nothing. Butler County Chief Coroner, Dr. Richard Burkhart, performed the autopsy. Without a head or even fingerprints to guide him, identifying the body would be difficult. And there was an additional challenge. He first needed to determine the victim's gender.
The unusual thing about the torso was that we weren't immediately able to say whether it was male or female. An examination was made of the lower abdomen or pelvis, and we found the presence of a uterus and ovaries. Obviously now the torso is a female. From there into the injuries on the arms, up in the chest.
But Dr. Burkhart still did not know how she died.
We x-rayed the body to make sure there wasn't any lead from a bullet. And examination of the heart, lungs for conditions that could have caused death, such as stab wounds, none were found.
The only certainty was that her head and limbs had been cleanly severed.
You were there.
The tool markings left on the body looked as if they were made with a household saw. Based on the temperature of the river and the level of the body's decomposition, Burkhart believed the woman had been dead for at least 2 weeks.
When we come to the neck,
At the Butler County Sheriff's Office, Major Dwyer read the autopsy report and began to slowly piece together a case. A woman was dead, but he knew little else. Each year, an average of 50 people are reported missing in Butler County alone.
Our first priority was to try and identify the body. Then the subsequent part is obviously it's a homicide or some kind of abuse of a corpse where they've cut somebody up. It's going to be a long run to even try and identify it.
If Major Dwyer hoped to ever identify the woman, he needed more information. To narrow the search, investigators turned to Dr. Elizabeth Murray, an anthropologist at the College of Mount St. Joseph in Cincinnati. One of only 50 certified forensic anthropologists in the country, she is an expert in analyzing skeletal remains. After boiling the bones to remove the flesh, Dr. Murray examined them to establish the victim's approximate age. Because the chest of the torso was slight in build, she could not rule out the possibility that the victim was a teenager. However, a closer examination of the collarbone, rib cage, and pelvis showed otherwise.
And I came up with a rough age range of probably 25 to 45 years of age at time of death, and I felt that she was probably somewhere right in the middle of that age range.
Dr. Murray next began the difficult process of determining the victim's height.
Normally you would measure a long bone such as one from the legs, but in this case we didn't have those. I had to use some unusual methods. I had to take the clavicle from the torso, measure it, and try to come up with a stature based on that. And that isn't a bone that directly contributes to your stature, so that method was a bit unusual.
Dr. Murray concluded the victim was taller than average, between 5'6" and 6'1". Although the physical description was vague, it gave Major Dwyer a definite lead.
Torso only recovered.
He resumed his search where he had started it, back at the river.
Listing any and all missing reports.
Major Dwyer searched databases of missing persons reports starting 20 miles upstream.
From the Hamilton area north along the Great Miami River. The river runs to the south, so we figured the body was placed somewhere north of Hamilton.
They got a hit.
Approximate height, 5'8".
14 miles upriver, a woman from Middletown, Ohio, was missing.
Requesting all missing
She
person
fit the
reports.
physical description, both slender and taller than average.